I just had a really engaging conversation with Dr. Stephen Goedert and his wife, Jackie. I've known them for, oh my gosh, I don't know how long. They were the first people I met when I moved to Redding, California. I just fell in love with them and the work that they do with children and with adults. I love your office wall where you framed all your thank you letters and notes from children to adults. It's really impressive. And I feel like so much of what you do in a way that's like a quiet hero of your community. You don't go out and bluster around about everything that you're going to accomplish through vision therapy and your neurooptometry and Syntonics. You are of the mind that if people find you, then they need to find you. And if they don't, you don't go out and drum up business. And you've been in business for many, many years. This just goes to prove that what you're doing is working and helping a lot of people. So I'm so happy to bring this information to my community. I talk about you quite a bit during trainings. If I'm doing some visual work, I'll quote you. I've learned so much about being in the body and how much your inside sense of safety has to match your outside sense of safety. And you can't feel safe on the outside if you're not safe on the inside. And what a big part our vision plays in that.
There's been some development. I think I was just getting into the neurooptometry kind of maybe when we last met. I don't remember. And that was allowed me to work in a hospital setting with head trauma, stroke victims, people whose brain basically has been wiped clean like a computer, and having to build them up, visually speaking, from the ground up. And that was enlightening to see how some of these principles really, in a clinical sense, how they really work. We did things like basically what's called yoke prisms. A lot of these patients would have what's called neglect or reduced visual fields, and by fitting them with these yoke prisms that opened that up and allowed them to be more mobile, and it made the OTs and the PTs working with them being able to accelerate their therapy. So it was kind of a joint effort. It was really fun working with those folks, and I learned a lot. And we traded information, and so there's like three parts. So the vision training kind of deals with the mind and body, and that's what you're familiar with usually and things. And then the neuro is kind of I'm starting to see a lot more neuro patients. When I first started, I was mostly with kids. Now it's probably 50%.
Almost, yeah.
With these head traumas and stroke victims. But the therapy is basically the same. And so the newest component is Syntonics, and that is really miracle working.
Light therapy.
It's the light therapy. It's interesting because we're able to communicate with the brain. The brain tells us what it wants as far as the different frequency of light. It's I won't get into all that, but that's kind of in a nutshell. So basically, we have three fronts. We have the vision training, which works with the body and mind. And then we have the neuro, which is more the ambient and the focal vision. I think we talked about that in the past. So, and then the newer one that I'm really starting to expand on is the Syntonics and the light therapy.
For our audience, what is the difference in ambient and focal vision? I know it's really complicated.
What the focal vision is what you think about clarity. The focal is more the central vision, and the ambient is more, it's not really, it is peripheral, but it's more than peripheral. And so the ambient vision is pre-conscious. It's like radar. It pre-plans movement. It helps with walking, pre-planning walking. They both have to be in balance. And this whole thing with the mind, the brain waves, all this it's balance. This is where I really could see this in the clinic and working with at the hospital with head trauma. What happens with trauma is the focal and the ambient get dissociated. And what happens, there's an overabundance of they become focalized like Parkinson's, where they walk like robots because they have to plan their movement. The appropriate colors and prisms on there, all of a sudden they just, in an instant, they start walking normally. So we have to kind of see that because it's kind of hard to believe. So really, but like I say, it's not everything, but that's kind of a third of the therapy I'm doing now, we're working with the colors and the yoke prisms. The vagus nerve is maybe really a subset of the parasympathetic. It's where someone is basically completely shut down. So that's kind of the way we look at this. And that's it's to be a tough situation, you know. Then but getting back up to the Syntonics, we work a lot with that, the balancing of that sympathetic and parasympathetic. And in my handout, I made the note that in the eye is the only part of the body where the sympathetic and the parasympathetic have to orchestrate together as one. Everywhere else in the body, they oppose each other. So that's where the Syntonics gets that. It works more on hormones, and that's probably the biggest part of the Syntonics that it's not addressed maybe with the vision training in the neural. So let me give you an example of some of the patients that come in that because under pressure, which you're referring to as the sympathetic, a lot of my kids are just not making it at school. They're full of fear. And when you're scared, your pupils get big and your eyes go out. That's just more of a defensive mechanism. So allow more light in to search for danger, and the eyes go out to search more of the periphery. So there's a situation that's in Syntonics. It's called the alpha omega pupil. So what I do is I shine a light in normal room illumination on the pupil, and the pupil should constrict and stay constricted. But with the alpha omega pupil, with the kids that I work with, after a couple of seconds, those pupils open back up. And that's what's called an alpha omega pupil. That's because they're kind of an overbalance in the sympathetic push. So the sympathetic is like when you're scared, the pupils get big. So these kids are like this all the time. I don't know if you remember when you had your eyes dilated, you can't read up close. So not only are the eyes going out, but when the pupils is large, when it should be small, things are blurry. So that's why reading glasses and things don't work. And then, of course, they have the tonal fields. And that's another big thing in Syntonics, which really open up these kids that have the alpha omega pupil usually have a 5 degree or less visual field. And so their fields are very small. And again, that's kind of more of a retreating posture that takes place. And so what's kind of cool about this, the right appropriate colored lights, that starts opening that field up. And what I tell my parents, it's like what a farmer will do before they plant. They have to plow the field. So the Syntonics really kind of prepares and kind of opens things up to be receptive to some of the vision training. So it really cuts the training time almost in half.
Wow.
So just to review too, is that it's with the sympathetic and parasympathetic, you have to understand that like the sympathetic controls the thyroid, the adrenal, pituitary, the growth, the muscles. That's a sympathetic, and the parasympathetic has the parathyroids, the adrenal cortex, digestive tract. So it's that hormonal. It's affected when they're out of balance. Okay, and that's a big part of the therapy too. What that I do now that I've not done before is the colored visual fields, and visual fields are like how we measure how far you can see out peripherally. But with different colors, they're associated with different functions of toxicity, over medication, have to do with emotion, having to do with accommodation or focusing, having to do with your span of spatial recognition. That's all measurable with these colored visual fields, and that's part of Syntonics too. And that's one way that the brain kind of talks to you, telling you what needs to be done. And so with appropriate light therapy, we can rearrange and get those target areas where the brain can start waking up areas that maybe were asleep and not being used. A lot of the kids, most of them have motion sickness and can't ride in their cars. And, that's just because everything's out of balance.
And that corrects itself after light therapy and vision therapy.
Yes.
So
and
that's a direct effect to the digestive tract and the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
It's showing us that that's healing to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing research on yellow paper and red markers, and that's supposed to make children be able to learn vocabulary faster or spelling words faster? What do you think about that?
It depends where, yes, I mean, all the colors have an effect, okay? But I think with Syntonics is an actual, I think maybe a little better organized way of determining the proper color, because you actually can talk to the brain, and that's the brain tells you what it wants. I know when I talk to my teachers, a lot of them are just used overlays, and so the reds usually stimulate, and they're for the kids whose eyes go in. And most of the kids that I see are exo, where the eyes are out, and those are in the blues. And the greens are more of kind of like a holding or a balancing to maintain, like braces. They keep things in balance. So it gives you a kind of a overview. So the different. So you can, if you're using red with a kid whose eyes go out, you're really kind of using the wrong color. Syntonics it's okay, but it's not everything. I think you need to. The kids they need to have a behavioral eye exam. Someone that is able to understand Syntonics, understand neural, and understand basic vision training. That's what's kind of exciting. My last seminar I went to in San Diego, there was a lot of young doctors there, and that was really uplifting to see the interest in that, because it's not everyone's doing vision training, all the eye doctors, but right now I'm getting a lot of referrals, but they need to go to somebody to make sure that the visual system is working properly. Yesterday I had two older ladies that I did my color visual fields on. It was really interesting to see the one is really having medical issues. You can really see how the toxicities of all the medicine she has is affecting this whole balance of her health. Especially with my stroke and head trauma, I'm really using the yoke prisms. And what the yoke prisms do is basically, what happens also is that the midline changes. And so with the stroke, when you lose your visual field, you actually lose your center line. So instead of your center being here, it's actually either left or right. And so so all my patients, I have them do a walk for me. And usually I can almost tell by the way they walk what I'm going to do for them, because they walk to the side that's off. They present the side that's off. So I have them walk 30 feet, and below and behold, they'll walk maybe to the right. And so what I do with the yoke prisms, I use different powers, but I kind of fool the brain where actually the prism moves the visual midline back to center. And so that definitely, they start walking straight. They feel better. They feel like they're not walking on a waterbed. So everything's affected by just because the brain believes what the eyes are sending it. So once the eyes start to send a little bit more accurate information, it changes the body posture and able to walk, and the gait changes.
Well, and it calms them down. They feel safer because they're getting better information.
Definitely. Yes, because all these folks that are that have trauma like that, there's lots of fear and lots of just it's just really stressful.
Well, they're at risk. They know they're at risk because they're not. And I think the same is true of the kids who have visual issues. They know that they're not functioning properly, or they're not getting accurate information, so they become more anxious. And then that is a feedback loop with the whole the polyvagal system and the lack of safety and all of those things.
If you're insecure and inaccurate in your internal space world, you're going to be inaccurate with your external space world. The inside has to match the outside.
Yeah, and that's polyvagal theory also, right? That you have to feel that safety, and you have to be able to accurately match it with your experience. So getting the visual information to match the internal information is a great beginning, a way to access that.
I had 3 men tell me a few weeks ago at a gathering they couldn't read in school because of print floating and moving all around, getting bigger and smaller. I mean, that's a vision training question there. So if the eyes are not, so if, okay, 100% of the kids and 80% of the head trauma, they're all seeing double. Okay. And so what happens when you see double, the eyes are not they're not fusing together. And each eye has its own representing of their space world. So once the eyes are not working together, one eye is saying, this is over here, this is the reality. And the other eye over here is saying, no, this is reality. And so what you have a conflict of an apparent movement because the brain's shifting from one world to the other.
Trying to get accurate information.
And after a while, you start learning to suppress or turn off. But that's, so when you, and of course there's tracking and other things, but I think that what your question is more when you see that craziness, that's the eyes are just kind of pulling apart or going in. And the eyes are out of sync. It's not a muscle thing. There's 6 muscles in each eye. It's not a muscle thing, it's a neural thing. How those eyes work together, it's a neural thing.
It's the information they send to your brain and how the brain keeps trying to interpret it.
Exactly.
And then that causes the anxiety because it knows it's getting inaccurate information. So that's where the fear and anxiety comes with those diagnoses.
Eventually, Mother Nature steps in and the brain just shuts off entirely one eye. But that brings down with the other systems. It's not like
Coordination.
Yeah, coordination is affected, balance is
Depth
affected,
perception.
depth perception. Yeah. 70% of the nerves going to the brain are visual. 4 of the 12 cranial nerves have to do with vision. So we're visual light creatures.
And that's when you begin to get a negative self-image. You begin to get angry. You begin to get fearful.
Don't fit in.
Yeah. You feel like there's what's wrong with me kind of thing.
And so just taking that a step further, if that's happening a lot, see that the way our thinking is, and that's when you go into this depth of that poly depth, or what is it? I guess you call it dorsal, or that's kind of the way I kind of been looking at the polyvagal. That it's part of that parasympathetic system, but it's when it just shuts things off. And it's when people get shut off, it's real tough to get them back out of the, then you got the psychological, you got to bring everybody, you got to bring everybody into on the game. It's tough.
But that's also why when we have success with vision therapy, the child gets more confident. And some of that hyperactivity, is greatly reduced because you don't have that fearfulness. They don't know where they are in space, or they don't know where they belong and they can't seem to make things work. They're usually smart, so they can see that other kids can do this. Why can't they? And when they begin to function more effectively, and this is true with adults, head trauma, stroke victims, Parkinson's, everything. If they can begin to trust their input a little bit more and trust their ability to function a little bit more, they begin to calm down and they begin to feel a little more confident. And we notice that most in our, in the young kids who are doing the vision therapy. It sort of changes their personality when it's successful. Yeah. Assuming there aren't too many other negative factors happening in their personal life.
Family issue, that overrides pretty much everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care what color you put on their eyes. It's,
physical danger.
They got situations at home where they're, yeah.
This sure brings back a lot of memories, thinking of my kids when they were this young. They're now 25 and almost 28. I'm really grateful to the Goederts for all that they've done for my kids and also for their mentorship.
Ready? Right? Come on, get you to the right. Then when you come back here, I want you to do a knee drop without me telling you to do a knee drop. Okay? I'm telling you now, but you got to do that in your game plan. Okay? You ready? Got the game plan? Okay. Let's see. Ready? Right? Left? Okay, Winnie, the
You go, Mom.
What am I doing now? White, Shalia?
Yeah.
Oh, every time I do that though, I
You
get
got
lost.
it.
You gotta push the middle.
The
Central.
middle one, middle one.
That's why you couldn't get it, Mom.
Oh. Darn it. I got a 26%. Anyway, accuracy 0.